Welcome back to Dreamhack Hearthstone Grand Prix. It's winter, it's 2016, and we had almost 200 players that gathered here to play, well, in the Swiss format. But after 9 rounds, we finally have 16 players that after blood, tears, and sweat that was shed have, well, fought really bravely. With me, Sotul, and Lorinda. Hello, guys.
Hi. Hey, what's up? We've been long
took
day.
a while.
Sat around. Feel like I've been waiting in the wings, champing at the bit to actually get on here and call some games. And finally, here I am. Top 16 time, just in time to really get stuck into the meat of this tournament now.
You're looking at me as if I haven't already been stuck into the meat of this tournament as we've grinded through the Swiss, and these poor players have played 9 rounds to get here.
9 rounds is a lot, but we also have, because of that, we have really a major number of results, so we can narrow it down to the top 16.
Right.
And there were some results that kind of upset some people, and as you can see now, this is the top 16. So let's maybe talk a little bit about those players. Lorinda, what can you tell us about the first places? There are people with 8 wins.
DawN in particular, he won WCA a year ago, won a lot of money, like $100,000 plus dollars there, and that launched his career, allowed him to start streaming, allowed him not to have to get a job, meant he could take it a lot more seriously, and his results have got a lot better, you know, more consistent. Just from that one big result, he's now catapulted a career out of it. He's doing well in a lot of tournaments right now.
Yeah, if you start to move through back in that 7-2 bracket in the middle, some of the big names that you know, Super JJ, of course, the absolute Swiss king, but also shout out to Ness, who's a player we both know from the UK, Lorinda, who is kind of our JJ equivalent. Whenever there's a Swiss tournament, he tends to do very well in it as well, and some of these players just on 6 and 3 missing out, but special shout outs to Frozen and Odemian, who were the 2 players that missed out on 7 and 2 just by the narrowest of tie-break margins. And Frozen, to me, is a player I would have loved to see in top 16 because I think he's in with a shout of being one of the strongest players in the world just from a technical standpoint. So his overall record as well, Neil, in Dreamhacks is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's 23 and 6 before rounds 6, 7 and 8, so add some 2 and 1 onto that, and he missed out. With one result to come, he was in 16th place. And somebody who he played against somebody who he didn't play, and the result went against him, changed the tiebreakers by that amount to put him into 17th. But somebody's got to come 17th, and that's how the tiebreakers work.
Someone always be at that spot, exactly. And
it was Pavel earlier in the year, so who knows what's next for Frozen.
Exactly what I wanted to say. And also, like guys like Oskaka, the world champion from 2015, was at 6-3. We had Rain also at 6-3, right? So some people that are actually very known are almost there at the top 16. And I think everyone that got to the point where he can be at the top 16 in a Dreamhack Grand Prix, that's like an achievement, and we should be celebrated, and we should celebrate it more to see consistent players getting to that top. And I hopefully people on Reddit will also understand that.
Wow. Pleading towards Reddit's better nature, Lothar. That's always a disaster waiting to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, well, let's see the brackets. Here are the brackets. So the way it works, the guy that took the first place will play against the last place from the top 16. So we see that DawN is playing against Unit from Gamers Origin, who didn't have yet a breakout performance, although we see him at almost every single tournament.
Right.
Yeah, the closest he's come in the past really is a top 8 at Dreamhack last year, Dreamhack Summer in 2015. So, yeah, he's had a decent run, and he's been around this Dreamhack circuit for a long time. But as you said, kind of one of those names that's only known to people within the scene who really pay attention to the Hearthstone esports scene. Not really a huge breakout name yet towards the greater public, but a big win here could, of course, catapult his career.
Exactly. Then we have another matches to be seen. We have Zostan and The Fallen. The Fallen is actually the brother of Evangelion from Valencia, who is the champion of Dreamhack Valencia.
Yes.
And then we have Loyan and, well, let's say that's not the number guy. So it's Kacper from Poland, who has a really weird nickname. So we have 2 Polish guys playing against each other. Then we have Matty and Sintolol. Sintolol is a player that was in the last call for this year's BlizzCon. Matty is a new guy here in the scene, but he made an 8-1 Swiss results. So
Wow.
looking forward to see him play. Pokravac versus Mitsuhide. What can you tell us? About those two guys?
Pokravac you may have been familiar with if you follow the HCT format throughout the year. He showed up in, I believe, spring was the event that he made into, spring or winter, earlier in the year. Mitsuhide, from his part, is, again, been a mainstay of the Dreamhack circuit, actually won one of the side events that goes on here. For the players that do not make the top 16 cut, they basically rerun the tournament with the remaining players. So when you say side event, this isn't some casual tournament that you're winning. This is just another shark-infested pit that you're fighting through after the top 16 have been taken out of the pool. And Mitsuhide actually has one of those tournaments to his name already. So he's a hell of a player.
I would say even that the side event is more competitive than the main event because everyone that kind of tried to get into the main event and then is like, I'm not gonna play anymore. Those people are like, those are not the super competitive players. But someone that gets here and then plays in both events, he's like, he wants blood. He wants to win some event, right? So it's super competitive. Now we have the classes. DawN is playing with a Mage, Druid, and a Warlock while Shaman's banned. Well, that's not a surprise, right?
We have seen this lineup before. It's been known.
Yeah, 1 or 2 times. This is it resembles a Conquest lineup to an effect, really, not having the Warrior in it, but Uni does have the Warrior, and it's the Warrior that's being banned here with the Shaman being left open. Lorinda, you cast DawN earlier. Is he playing Freeze Mage?
Not that I remember.
Okay, because it's interesting.
I'm old and forget things sometimes, but
sure.
not that I remember.
Admittedly, Tempo Mage is a deck people are playing to target towards Shaman anyway, but to have that utter confidence to leave the Shaman up, it's a strategy we've seen working out reasonably well for some players. Stan Sifka, of course, has got all the way here to top 16 with that leave Shaman open strategy, but interesting to see what DawN has in store for us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm quite surprised by anyone who is not banning Shaman, right? It's kind of
because Shaman can just go through your lineup no matter how anti-Shaman your lineup is, but he's happy leaving it open, and he's 8-1, so he's doing something right.
Oh, now we're jumping into the game. So it is a Tempo Mage. So it's Tempo Mage versus Zoo, DawN versus Uni, the top 16 of Dreamhack Hearthstone Grand Prix here at Dreamhack Winter. Guys, take it away.
Yeah, and straight away, this is the Tempo Mage from DawN. As I said, Tempo Mage can still give you a little bit of confidence to be able to counter Shaman. It is a reasonable matchup. The build here is interesting, though, because Loot Hoarder's in the deck. Loot Hoarders often come in place of the Cult Sorcerer, and Cult Sorcerer is actually a very, very effective card for winning the early game against Shaman, if that's what you're targeting, because Sorcerer Arcane Blast is such an amazing part of board control in the early game.
And he's got the, talking about controlling the early game, he's going to need it. He's against Zoo, which is obviously a bad matchup for him. But he does have the Flamewaker, Coin, Missiles, Loot Hoarder. Everything's going, if he's going to get the win against the Tide here, this is the hand he would want.
Yeah, it is unfavored, but the way unfavored works is that there are some hands you can draw that do beat what your opponent is able to do. It's just a matter of doing that consistently. If you're unfavored, it means that you don't have consistent draws that are able to do that. But if you grab the board early with a Flamewaker, Arcane Missiles, and they then don't have the Soulfire to remove it immediately, then Tempo Mage does very, very well. But the amount of ifs that were in that sentence, that's what we mean when we say it's unfavored, because all of that has to come together.
But it looks like it might. I mean, if
really
you're
might,
going to go for it, this is the hand you would want, including that Finance Portal. You wouldn't want it just yet, but it's ready there to tidy up a mess later, or even just to go face to prevent some card draw. And he has so many choices right now. And he's going to think about using the missiles, which means he's not going to be able to Flamewaker coin them next turn. I thought maybe he'd go with the Frostbolt here, but he's happy doing it this way around and then relying on the ping to clear up the entire board.
So I actually, having looked at it, I like this play a lot because he's taken the board presence very, very early. As I said, the Flamewaker plan has another proviso added to it, which is if there is a Soulfire, it can still be a bad situation for you. This gives you less of an oppressive Soulfire turn from the opponent, but what he didn't account for here was playing on curve perfectly into Argent Horse Rider, because really, who plays around Argent Horse Rider against Zoo these days?
Right, and this is where maybe a player like you need, who again, gets around the circuit, he's a player we all have heard of and know his results have been decent, but maybe he doesn't get as well scouted as some of the better players. So Argent Horse Rider, if it's put in one of the main players' decks, people know after 3 rounds.
Right.
But maybe he just wasn't aware that was a threat there.
Yeah, and that decision, wow, okay. So yeah, suddenly the anti-Shaman line starts to make sense.
Right.
This is a target Shaman build. Again, interesting that the Loot Hoarder's there. I imagine that the Cult Sorcerers haven't been cut completely. If you're playing the Arcane Explosion build, you really want that extra spell damage still in the deck. So interesting to see exactly what his 2-drop package is with the Loot Hoarder in there as well. But this is clearly a strategy to somewhat target Shaman, make sure it can't run away with the game. And in this case, he's got just a happy, nice little byproduct here that some of these tech cards that you include are actually pretty effective against Zoo as well.
And I think the Loot Hoarder might just be a nod to the fact you're playing Arcane Explosions. Maybe you're even playing 2 Arcane Explosions. You're going to need
that would be
the
ambitious.
Card draw.
Yeah, sure.
You're going to need to keep that card coming if you're going to keep trying to blow things up every single turn. So maybe it's just a case of he just went a lot cheaper. We get more out of your Flame Waker that way as well.
Sure.
And then you can just keep the hand full.
This double Councilman, though, is going to start to become a problem. He really wants to start pairing some of these cheaper spells like the Arcane Blast and the Frostbolt with his Flame Waker, but the shape of the threats that's being presented to him right now is just not really giving him the opportunity to develop the Flame Waker, so he is just going to try and go for it here without there even really being a perfect situation for it. It's not like he's getting a ton of value out of this, and it's not like the value that he is getting is even possibly going to present a board clear. He just knows that he can't hang around forever here, and looking at his hand, he can see that very soon his curve kind of dictates itself. Drake Arcane Blast as a pairing, followed by Firelands Portal. So he looked down at his hand here and said, honestly, when am I playing this Flame Waker if not right now?
Yeah, and this is the downside of the play he chose to make on turn 2 when he cleared up the board and grabbed the board, walking into that Horse Rider. Had he not, he'd been in a great spot, but of course he did. Now this Flame Waker's been a lot less effectual than it would have been had he gone the other way. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, just that he gave up the chance to clear this sort of board when he did that.
Right, and again, let's contextualize that situation, because he left himself with a Mana Worm in play against nothing versus
against Zoo, which has no stuff.
Zoo does not want to develop into a board that you already have, so you're basically forcing them to have Soulfire even earlier than you would have forced them to have with the Flame Waker play. It just so happened there was an X-Factor tech card in the Zoo that he hadn't planned for. That Argent Horse Rider just came straight out of left field, crushed his dreams, and it's pretty much just been downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, it just snowballed out of control. Again, the opposite side of Zoo not wanting to play into a board is as soon as Zoo's got any sort of board and the board is 1 minion versus no minions,
right.
Zoo just is known. We all know this. It just snowballs out of control. And the reason we've been talk stoning for 2 or 3 turns is, well, you guys are watching it snowball out of control. There's no point just elaborating on that particular aspect of it.
Yeah, there is one single consideration left from Unid in this matchup, and that is now just Flame Strike.
Right, and he should be aware to that if it is there. We don't know the lineups, but if he's leaving Shaman open, there's a very good chance there's at least one Flame Strike or something similar hanging about in this deck.
Wow, and Unid actually gives the nod. That was what this turn was all about. He went face with his Doomguard because he wants the Doomguard at high health, but the respect of the overkill into the Drake just to take 2 minions off the board was because he wants to play around Flame Strike here, and the threat of Flame Strike, the threat of a card that is not even in DawN's hand, has actually gained him 5 life in that situation.
And a turn, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the important thing,
Unid
right?
was happy just to say, okay, wow, I saw it as well as the Hoarders, you were correct. So he was happy to say, look, I'm Zoo, I'm going to try and top deck my buffs, but I'm happy just to not even leave lethal on board, because if I lose to Flame Strike, I just lose this game sometimes.
Yeah, so now here is the careful balancing act when you're playing an aggressive deck against a Tempo Mage. Sure, you want to play around Flame Strike, but generally the way that you play around Flame Strike is that you narrow your board, you shrink it in, you start to have a smaller amount of larger threats. But suddenly, if you go too far with that, you start to play into Fireball as removal, and more importantly, Firelands Portal as a massive swing. So when you're walking this tightrope of playing around Mage's removal, that's what you really need to look out for. Don't tunnel vision on just playing around Flame Strike. Make sure you don't walk into Firelands Portal as well. I think Unid has done that pretty well. He's not looking overly vulnerable here at all.
Another thing you have to factor in when you're doing all that is, of course, your health total. Against some decks like Warrior is just almost not an issue. Against Tempo Mage, you just don't want to go much below about 15, so by taking your time, you can't just expect to life tap your way out of trouble if you do take too long.
Quick note about the Rag being revealed there off the Discover effect, off the Joust effect, is that actually affects some of the hand reads in this matchup, because there's some cards on the left-hand side of DawN's hand that haven't been played for a long time. And those are cards that you need might be giving credit for being Flame Strike.
Right.
So having now seen Rag come off the Joust, that's another one of those cards of what it could
isn't
be.
Flame Strike.
Right.
That could be Flame Strike now.
So his read on those cards on the left-hand side would be maybe Flame Strike, maybe Firelands Portal, maybe Ragnaros. When he rules Ragnaros out of that equation, maybe he starts to convince himself even more heavily that that is in fact a Flame Strike that's sitting in hand. And as I said, fearing that card being Flame Strike can cause him to play immediately into Firelands Portal.
Yeah, and it's just starting to have a chance of not winning this. It looked all over when we were Talkstoning, but the last couple of turns with that trade where he gave up a couple of minions to play around the Flame Strike, followed by the mirror images coming down, which he had to then take time to get rid of, just slowed him down enough that if there is a Flame Strike in DawN's deck, he's getting time to find it.
He's thinking he does discard the Argus here. The Argus allowed him to deal with the Flame Waker, but that high-risk play, discarding and trying to cycle to that Soulfire, has paid off so big for him. That is a huge pickup to actually clear the board, but now this is a pretty promising looking hand from DawN in terms of sustainability. If he doesn't die immediately here, these two back-to-back Firelands portals can go a long way to swinging him back onto the board in this game. And with the Doom Guards gone already, him winning the board is pretty much what matters at this point because most of the burst damage has already gone.
Yeah, he may also just want to add up going face. I don't think he can, but he's got to take at least a nod to the fact he's got 14 damage in hand and 2 pings against a guy who's got 17.
That's very
who
true.
May well life tap. I don't think he's going to, but yeah, the portals are the most sort of fluctuating portals in all of Hearthstone. I think that you get some really good rolls and some really bad ones, and wow.
That is the one remaining piece of burst in the deck, I think. I think we've seen both Doom Guards. One Soulfire was, of course, just used, so outside of Dark Peddler, that Soulfire is the last remaining source of damage that does not need the turn of setup to be played on the board. So he's going to be forced to use it here just to keep the board because it's not good enough to get him there on its own. Keeping the Darkshire Librarian here is huge as well because now he's just so aggressively building a board, and that Darkshire Librarian will net him one additional card in terms of trying to get there in the endgame.
Sorcerer's Apprentice a little bit late here, I think. Still decent to have a minion on the board, but Zeus still has plenty of buffs left. It's coming through this for probable lethal.
Portal the dog. Oh, that's huge. That is so sick. The Psychotron there is phenomenal. There are a few taunt minions you can pick up off the Firelands portal, and the Fen Creeper as well, and there's the Crazed Worshipper, I think is the name of the Cthulhu minion. That's the
But we've got to
taunt.
juggle it into potentially this Divine Shield, by the way, here. So just for a sec, see how it happens here, because this would be huge if you can hit it.
Oh, goes
and
face.
it can't.
And this could be it. This could be the moment it all slips away, because remember, the direct damage has gone. He has to chew his way through this taunt minion, and this essentially is just a free turn of initiative. If this knife does not hit, now it does.
Oh.
That's huge. He needed to win 1 out of 2. Did in the end. And the Ragnaros pickup here, definitely not the most useful card. Could have done with something more immediate, something more controllable. But if it is able to take out one of these minions here, he'll find himself in a very, very promising spot. I think I like the ping on the knife juggler.
That's my instinct, but there's going to be breakpoints on this health total regarding tapping and such like. So if you ping face, now if you need taps, then the Ragnaros represents lethal damage to face.
That's very true. Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. So yeah, Knife Juggler is going to potentially do some work on this Sorcerer's Apprentice, but yeah, with the ping to face, he has at least set himself up a 1 in 4, and a 1 in 4 is what we have. Senor Del Fuego, take it away, sir. The floor is yours. No! Zoo, after looking so assured, being so far in front in this matchup, DawN did his best to claw it back as the Tempo Mage did a great job fighting himself back into it, but in the end, he was just that one Ragnaros shot away. But shoutouts to him, he made the right decision, at least setting himself up a win condition there at the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm just sniggering a little bit here because Unid is sitting in his chair looking more nervous after going through that than he did at the start of the match on this big game. Like, it looks like normally you win your first game, it settles you down, but he just had to survive a 25% rag shot to the face on the end of a nail-biting game as well. well, and he looks more nervous than he did in the beginning when he looked pretty calm.
So I imagine we're going to see a Zoo Mirror here. This has happened with remarkable consistency. Yeah, the way that most people's lineups have been constructed in this tournament, and it's a little bit of a weakness, maybe something that people could have got ahead of, something that maybe will see the eventual winner having got ahead of, is when someone has opened Zoo and won with Zoo, most people's best answer to that has been to just cue the mirror match. That's not a situation you want to have, so it might be that is a little bit of a weakness in people's lineups that might be exploitable. We might see a player later on having solved that, and that be the big thing that pushes them towards the top 4 finals period of this tournament. But as far as Zoo Mirrors go, I think the current form of the Zoo Mirror is actually one of the most interesting forms that we've seen in a long time, because there's actually potential to swing and reverse board states kind of past turn 5, turn 6 that never really used to happen, because both players have their explosive discard silverware golem turns at different times, which means the tide of the game swings back and forth a lot more often.
Yeah, something like just any Doom Guard into the silverware golem as a fight back to kill your opponent who just did that.
Right.
Like you say, you don't always want to be the first one to do that, although you usually do, so you do it and make sure it's okay. And we're just seeing it happen more and more. We also saw a lot of players give a nod to the fact they knew that this mirror match was a lot of this tournament. We saw Fireback playing Forbidden Ritual for the mirror.
Sure.
And we also saw RDU talking earlier about he took out Defender Vargas and just went a bit cheaper in general to try and combat the mirror as well.
Interesting. So just to make sure he didn't have those clunky draws, make sure his hand was fluid all the time, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
So they both approached it in different ways, but the players have acknowledged that this is the matchup they're trying to win.
Oh, sure. Both players here have had a reasonably solid opening. DawN's hand is definitely a little more explosive with the Malchezaar's Imp and the Soulfire. But Uni just has kind of a solid, consistent, old-fashioned Zoo hand here. Just small, efficient minions in combinations that mean you can play out even a 2-mana and a 3-mana turn in a massive variety of different ways, depending on how you want to prioritize things.
Yeah, it's just hard to get a really bad Zoo hand right now.
Yes.
The fact that a lot of the minions have now more than 1 health has made a big difference to Zoo as well. A lot of 1/3s hanging about, which makes a lot of decks harder to deal with them. They're remarkably hard to deal with, as if dealing with a whole board of 1 health guys wasn't enough. Now they're even bigger.
This is a downfall that it is a stark realization of when Councilman came out. Everyone was talking this card up and saying it's absolutely insane. When I first started testing the new build of Zoo with Councilman in it, one of the big weaknesses that I did notice was sometimes the Zoo Mirror, because this situation comes up and you would love an Imp Gang boss right now, but a Darkshire Councilman coming down just immediately gets farmed because it is actually a little slow. It comes into play as a 1/5.
It's a really good 4-drop.
Right, it seems a little ridiculous to refer to this card as being slow, but it's not a card that you can play on turn 3 in the Zoo Mirror unless you've actually gripped the board very, very early. So there you see DawN just having to do something a little bit unique, just using the Soulfire to take care of the problem, try and get some value out of this Councilman later. And you talked about RDU's tech decisions here to try and lower the curve of the Zoo deck a little bit. You can see this is not the hand that you want in the Zoo Mirror, just a 3-mana card and a 4-mana card. You would like to have 2 1-drops or a 1-drop and a 2-drop in your hand. Right?
You don't even mind having the Defender in your hand if that 3-drop is on the board and then you can Defender it up. That sort of synergy is what these players have to discuss with each other and with testing and stuff before these tournaments, because again they've identified that the Zoo Mirror is so important in the current meta.
Yeah, but this is nice though. Small decisions from DawN. Did wait with the Councilman, and now a turn later you said it's a really good 4-drop. It is indeed, coming down here on turn 4 with the Villager and contesting this board in a much nicer fashion, and now has basically free reign to do what it wants here, at least after it's dealt with that Voidwalker in play. But DawN is going to need a 1-drop again, doesn't get it, meaning he's going to have a little bit of a slow turn, and he absolutely cannot afford a slow turn with what is coming from Unit here.
Yeah, and I'm not a body language expert, but I think that DawN knows there's another Doom Guard. I think he worked out when did the Doom Guard discard, he started nodding as if to say, you've only played that because you've got 2 Doom Guards in your hand.
It's possible that was just a natural happy reaction to the Doom Guard just being discarded.
But you might be right. That's why I say I'm no expert. It could be the other way as well.
Yeah.
I just got the impression he kind of clicks why it's being played.
Is this hand good, thinking?
Thinking. Yeah.
Is there just any prettier sight in the game than those 2 cards being sat together in your hand with more than 5 mana available?
It's the bit where you now top deck the Imp.
No, you top deck the 2nd Silverware Golem. Get it right. Come on.
Sure.
Have you not played this game before, Neil?
I like sustain against my opponent Zoo, who's going to watch me. I don't know what they're going to do, but I want it anyway.
Yeah, I'll take the extra 6 power in board.
Question dodged. Right, so... Still trying to get that board together, but it's just not going to happen after this comes down.
Well, it's a 3-drop, but it's the wrong one. But either way, Doomguard is coming down. The Silverware Golem does come out, and we did talk up at the start how it is sometimes possible to recover from an early deficit in the Zoo Mirror now, which it never used to be.
Right.
But this is a really big early deficit. This is enormous. It would need to be exactly a Doomguard discard Silverware Golem turn here and trade into your opponent's Doomguard, but that just isn't available. He doesn't have either of those pieces in his hand right now.
And he gets the one piece, which is probably too late, but can he set something up that means he can play it next turn? But I don't think he can.
Yeah, it's just not looking great. Even with this Doomguard coming down and trading out the opponent's Doomguard, there's a natural trade on the board, even if there isn't a buff drawn. That Councilman is going to push probably at least 6 this turn. Knife Juggler is a great pickup. Darkshire Librarian, those were 2 beautiful draws off the natural draw and the tap. And now
Juggler's on point as well.
Yep, and 6 and 3 go to face. Lethal is set up on the board. DawN just has no answers to this, and Unid looks like he is running away with this right now.
And as we say so often in Last Hero Standing, if you lose game 2 when you're 1-0 down, you're more than 2-0 down because you've lost the match that you expected to be doing well in, which we know it was a 50-50 there. And so he doesn't fancy his last deck at all, most likely.
Yeah, so in Last Hero Standing, of course, you always have the opportunity to essentially queue snipe, right?
Yep.
You're just queuing in what you think your best matchup is. You can see the remaining matchup for DawN here is Druid, which is reasonably heavily unfavored against the Zoo. So as you mentioned, when you lose that second game, you're in a terrible position because you've lost your best answer to the deck that's threatening to sweep you. And this is just going to have to be one of those Druid miracles. If you need a deck to initiate some miracles for you, Druid is not a bad deck to do it, although it is back against the wall time here. This first matchup is going to be huge because this is the heavily unfavored one.
And it is the big Druid. It's the Yeshuraj Druid, which is better in the mirror, which is what a lot of people have targeted because Druid is a fundamentally really strong deck. It may not be so strong in the meta at the moment, but it's just a really powerful deck. But this deck particularly just worse against Zoo than even the normal version of the deck.
And still, already here on turn 1, there's a few decisions to make. He can just deal with this with Wrath because just the way the Zoo's minions curve out, their 1-drop quite often has more health than their 2-drop. So coining and using your removal off curve actually matches up with what they're doing. You know, you Wrath their 3 health 1-mana minion, then you Living Roots their 2 health 2-mana minion. But that does have serious implications for your curve going forward because you're being wasteful with your coins.
Wait, this is really powerful now. I think he's got something along the lines of Blood Mage, Innovate, Wrath for 1, draw a card, Living Roots the other thing, kill the 1/3 and just set up a Blood Mage versus nothing. That may not be good, but that's a way of getting on board against the Zoo, which is not a terrible idea.
It is a legal Hearthstone
But
turn.
all of the other things he can do this turn also, any combination of those things, depending how far deep he wants to go into spending his spare mana, his bonus mana with the Innovate, all of those things can now just get him into the game over the next few turns.
Interesting, just goes for the Living Roots here. I was wondering whether we would just see the Wrath, because next turn he has Innovate, Drake, Coin, Living Roots available to him, but I think what this signifies from DawN is that he's going to just try and be a little bit slower here and really just stretch out his mana tools, because what he doesn't want to do, basically what the turn you were describing would do.
It was all in on turn 3 top deck.
Right, he's not only potentially bricking 1 turn after that, he's potentially bricking 2 turns, trusting his deck. So he does really just want to stretch these resources out a little bit further, just make sure he has something to do for the next few turns.
And also he's recognized, I believe, that, okay, so I'm up against a Zoo board, it's never fun, but I have the tools to deal with it over time, and I'm not actually under any real pressure right now. You can take some damage as long as you know you can clear this mess up.
Yeah, and there's a huge swing potential in Blood Mage swipe or Azure Drake swipe at any given point. As long as the Innovate remains in hand, he's able to do that relatively easily, even in combination with other things if it's the Blood Mage variant. So I think he just feels like, you know, a bit of longevity here, just taking his time. Plenty of health still left to work with, but the Argus coming down down on curve here is so huge. This is the matchup where Argus really shines a lot of the time. We didn't see it at its best previously, although the Fandral pickup might have something to say about this game now. That was right on time. The Wrath comes out here. The Wrath can potentially draw Roots or Raven Idol for some additional value. There's the swipe, though, and now already you can see what we were talking about. Next turn, there is Blood Mage Coin Swipe available. It's not looking like it will be great next turn, but the fact that that threat remains in hand from this point forward is huge.
Yeah, this Soulfire might be also termed as huge right now. If it discards the Silverware Golem, it could be close to game over. If it discards the other Soulfire, it doesn't do that much.
It doesn't, no. So Imgang Boss can come down here for
Right.
sure.
Imgang Boss is always a bit of swipe defense, even if it's only
Yes.
a tiny bit, so you want to play that.
Imgang Boss is basically marking the target of where the swipe has to go. You're
Right.
taking the options away from your opponent, limiting their flexibility significantly. Does get the Silverware Golem discard. I mean, that looks bad for DawN. When he finds out what this one remaining card is, he's going to feel even worse about losing that 50-50. DawN is now a long way behind the play because, as I said, even the Blood Mage swipe does not really make a dent in this board.
And now this board is something he needs dealing with. Like early on, 1-3s, sure we can get away with that. Now you're taking 7 a turn, that's actually an emergency.
DawN has been an emotive player so far, so I do wonder what his face is going to look like when he finds out this other card is Soulfire. There it is, gives out the wry smile. He knows he's well behind the play here. The life tap comes out, and there is a bunch of board pressure. Direwolf picked up, so much damage coming in, and still the Blood Mage swipe is not looking good enough.
Yeah, Blood Mage Swipe will buy some time, I think, but beyond that, you don't have time. Zoo's just going to start tapping into more cards and find that second Doomguard.
And you talked about this tech decision, this archetype decision of it being the Yasharaj build of Druid having a huge impact on the Zoo matchup. It goes without saying, but this is why. Sometimes you just draw a 10-mana card you do not want to have in your hand ever against Zoo. So here you can see those minute deck building decisions really having an impact on your overall matchups in the tournament. And honestly, with players expecting a lot of Zoo in this tournament, does make me wonder whether the Yasharaj build was the correct option.
You're also expecting a lot of Druid and a lot of Warrior, though, in fairness.
Yes.
So that's 2 decks that you're better against with that, although you're good against the Warrior anyway.
Further counterpoint, a lot of the Warriors have been going towards Dragon Warrior, where again, you probably wouldn't want to have the Yasharaj as a draw that you come out.
And
so
such
it
is
starts
the
to get
problem
very
that the pro
difficult,
player
right?
has.
Yeah.
Like, what do I think the other people are going to go, and how far up the ladder of this beats this are they going to go before they stop? Ooh. And we will find out over the course of this top 16 which lineups were the ones that were... Was it the standard lineup that's going to be good, or is it going to be an imaginative lineup that actually just really just sweeps through this top 16?
So the Moonfire coming down here, I think we will see the Coin Feral Rage possibly for Armor here. Yeah, Armor seems more likely just to grow some sustain here, but that is his 3rd spell damage minion on the board. So Blood Mage and both Drakes have now been played, meaning that his ability to pair that swipe with anything super impactful is very, very diminished. And speaking of impactful, how is a Doomguard draw right now, Neil?
It seems pretty good right now. Uni's going for the tap, so he's got a choice as to whether to draw another card after or before, depending on what he picks up there. He just decides to stick it all on the... Oh, he decides to draw a card. That makes more sense.
Yep. Draws the perfect card, really. He wanted to hit one of those low-impact 1-drops in that situation, a Possessed Villager or a Voidwalker, get that garbage out of the deck, get closer to those bigger power cards like the Councilman that he needs, but most importantly, the damage that he has available to him. Raven Idol into Starfall even is not good enough. Raven Idol into something to pair with the swipe. Can't double swipe after the Raven Idol, doesn't have the mana available, so...
Yeah,
looking rough.
Looking really rough. Can he survive? And just wondering if there's any sort of Ragnaros play he can set up for next turn to give himself a 1 in 7 or something, just by not dying now, swiping face, and then just go for the massive 1 in 7 next turn. I don't think he can even pull that together.
No, doesn't look like he gets there that way, so it is going to have to be Discover here for some kind of removal option just to limit the board. But after this swipe is used, that's the 2nd swipe that's gone down. As I mentioned, the spell damage minions have all gone apart from Malagos, which is too expensive to pair with anything relevant. So he's really, really running short of ways to interact with this board.
Discover Deathwing and then don't die for 2 turns.
Seems valid. Might be as good as anything else. None of these are of great help to him right now. Mark of the Wild, no minion to pair it with. He is going to take it though. His Arcane Giants, even though they're not drawn, will actually be very, very cheap right now because of the amount of spells that have been drawn. So I think this Mark of the Wild pickup is just playing to his outs, and the outs that he sees is draw Arcane Giant, stick Taunt on it with Mark of the Wild.
3 damage needed. There's 2/3 of it. That's the wrong person.
Yep.
It's the wrong 3 damage.
Flame Imp doesn't help. It helps DawN at least progress somewhere towards that Ragnaros win condition that you were talking about, but beyond that, not a great deal of impact. But this board state is just so oppressive right now. It can even quite comfortably chew through that Arcane Giant Taunt that I mentioned on the previous turn. So this looks like it could all be ending in misery for DawN. You fight all day.
Right.
Or 2 days,
whole
in fact,
long days
to
for these
smash
players.
your way through this Swiss bracket, and it looks like it's going to all come crumbling down here in the very first hurdle of top 16.
Can he Mark of Wild this Ragnaros and buy himself a bit of time if it hits the right thing?
If it hits
Does it buy him a turn?
If it hits the Councilman, there is exactly 8 damage in play, which will not get through the 10 health of the Rag after the Mark of the Wild. So I guess that is an out.
Note that the Nourish has not been played either. One of their strongest cards hasn't had time. Will he hit the Councilman? This is a chance.
Oh! Got him!
What a shot. Who says Rag doesn't know where it's at?
What an esports champion. Possessed Villager picked up is not what he wants. Doomguard does the job though. DawN had a moment of hope from the Ragnaros, taking out the exact minion he needed it to, but the Doomguard means he plows through, does the honors with the last point of damage. Imp Gang Boss gets to conduct the ceremony, and that is a very, very quick 3-0 with Zoo. Words that I have heard flying around this room on more than one occasion over the last 2 days.
Yeah, won the Zoo mirror. 1-3-0, that's happening so much on this particular tournament with this particular meta, showing how important it is there to get the board and keep it big, because 10 extra damage to a Ragnaros,
seems fine.
Just 10.
Yeah.
That was blazing fast, I'd have to say, right? 3-0 with Zoo, another one. I actually discussed with Rodham before we went after the break back online, that the metagame is basically Zoo, and people were predicting wrong. And this is why this tournament looks like it looks. And in my opinion, that's a natural state in card games. Basically, at some point, you will have a metagame that will be aggressive, metagame that will be more controlish, and so on. And in this case, we have a metagame where Zoo is basically the king.
Right.
We see it now. Now it's happening. But we have Unit here. Congrats, man.
Thank you.
A swift victory, but it has to feel great when you win against someone who had a great success in the Swiss Porsche, right? What was your experience in the Swiss?
I didn't expect to go 3-0. My Zoo was by far not my best deck for this tournament. It was actually my Warrior, who never got banned until now. So I got really scared for a moment, because like all my 3-0 and my 2-0 all with Warrior. So I got lucky in the first game, because I saw that he kept most of his cards, and then it just snowballed.
So you know your each other's deck list, right? At this point, so maybe tell us why the Warrior is your best deck.
So I saw his lineup. It was like Zoo, Flamewalker Mage, a Druid, which is a weird list like Isharge and Barnes.
Yes.
And Shaman. So I knew that during the Swiss round he didn't ban some Shamans. I knew that. So I was kind of expected for him to ban my Warrior, because it was actually a really good deck. It's an Endless Warrior.
Okay. Guys, any questions?
Not too much, really. Pretty straightforward matchup. Series with the Zoo, sorry. But, like, it's interesting. I've seen this pattern come out where the first game is won with Zoo, and then the opponent has to queue Zoo as, like, the counter deck. Like, that's the best thing they have. Like, how do you feel about, like, Zoo's place in this tournament overall, even though that you said it wasn't the best deck for you?
So Zoo is like my main deck with Rogue. I think I practiced a lot in the Mirror Zoo, because it's a really difficult matchup. So I just had a good opening hand. I tracked its card, you know, what he kept in the mulligan and what he did every turn. So I knew what I had to do, and I don't really know. It's like who has the coin, who has a turn 3 first, who has an abusive sergeant to swing the board. It's like that.
Sure.
Yeah, how's that horse rider been for you through the Swiss? Has that been really good, the Argent
Been
horse rider?
amazing. Each time I dropped it, it was like to kill something with 2 life, and even if my opponent knows about it, it's like only 1 in the deck, so every time it's amazing.
You just straight up lose the game there if you don't
Yeah.
have the Horse Rider, right? With the Mana Worm 3-2,
Exactly.
your board clear, would have
It
been
was
game
amazing.
over. Yeah.
It's either that or Soulfire, which is,
No implosion.
yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, this one is actually balanced, so not that bad.
Yeah.
Right.
What would you do if you play Argent Horse Rider and suddenly 4 of them appear?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And with variable attacks, right? That's the way. Anyway, congrats. Top 16 is actually an amazing result so
you.
far, and now you're in the top 8, so you're battling not only for the cash but also for the points as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of important for you, I'm guessing, right? This is this the best result you got at Dreamhack so far?
Actually, yes. Last time I was top 16, it was like a year ago.
Yep.
But I've been in 2 preliminaries in 2015, so I want to try again in BlizzCon. In 2016, sorry.
Okay. Amazing. So good luck then.
Thank you very
much. And we'll see the next match, I hope, in just few minutes. I guess it's 2 minutes actually. So don't go anywhere.